Good morning and welcome back to Black Bear Forge. We finished our bolster the other day, and as promised, we're going to work on some swedges using some of this giant jackhammer bit that somebody sent me. I've got a couple of pieces cut off. So we need to go over to the forge, we need to get these hot, square them up under the power hammer, then a lot of this will be done under the hydraulic press. So let's get to work. It looks like I got that just a little bit out of square, but it's still easy to fix, lots of work left to do, so we can fix it at this point and then try not to let it get out of square a second time. So with our blanks forged to size, let's move over to the hydraulic press and rough in the hardy stem for our swedges. Then we'll put our giant bolster under here and upset that down in there, create a nice shoulder, and that should give us most of the tool done. We just have to create the impression that we want. I was just putting a little bit of a taper on these under the power hammer, kind of cleaning it up a little bit. The press is great for rough work, but it's not very good for precision work. Now these fit into my bolster, but if you notice, it sticks out the bottom. That's the last thing I want. If I upset the bottom of that outside the bolster, it's not coming back out again. So I want to cut this off, oh really in here somewhere. There just doesn't need to be that much of that. I may cut about 1.5 inches of it off or so. And the same thing is true for both tools. So I obviously left a little bit more material than I needed to make the swedge out of. In fact, the swedges don't need to be as thick as these are. These are awfully thick in the head at the moment. But we'll see what we end up with when we're done. So now from the high point of the shoulder, these are 2¼ inches. And I think some of this material will get pushed down and this will get even longer as we work on it and create the swedge. So I want to make sure it's plenty short so I don't end up bottoming it out. And a hardy stem doesn't need to be any longer than that. It just needs to be long enough to keep it in the anvil. And that's going to work out just fine. I could finish this at the anvil if I really wanted to, but it's going to be better if I do it under the press. Now, sometimes when you're in the middle of making something like this, you realize maybe you could have a better idea. And with that in mind, these things are way bigger than they really need to be for my purposes. That means I've got room for more than one impression in the top of one of these. And since both swedges were meant for different phases of a single project, it makes sense to just make one swedge for that project. So I'm going to sink both depressions in the top of one of these. That leaves me a spare. There have been a lot of times I've wanted a tapered swedge, so I think I'm going to go ahead and make a tapered swedge. And for doing that, I've got some form of an industrial cast-off here that somebody gave me once upon a time that has a nice, perfect round taper to it, and we'll use that to create that impression. After making my initial impressions under the hydraulic press, and then realizing that my camera quit running somewhere in that process, I'm now going to come to the anvil, just clean this up a little bit. My main purpose here really is making sure this fits the anvil, because the hardy hole may not be exactly the same as my bolster is. And this way I'm sure it sits down properly in my hardy hole from either direction. Now this is a 5/8 round bar, and I'm not going very deep. I don't want a half round impression here. I want an oval, and a fairly shallow oval. But this one's 7/8. And I do want a much deeper impression here. I'm going to knock the corners down a little bit so you don't leave a mark in your work. These are just bars out of the scrap pile. This also then allows me to set my taper a little bit more dramatically. And a little filing and grinding might well be in order here as well. Well, now the time has come to set these aside and let them slow cool and normalize, which will take the stress out of them and make them a little bit easier to work with in the long run. Now, some of you right now are wondering about hardening and tempering these. Probably an option. I don't know if I'm going to worry about it. I think what I will do is take those scraps we cut off the hardy stem and do some quick tests on air, oil, or water hardening to find out how this should harden, get an idea about how hard it'll go, file test the finished tools, see if maybe they're as hard as I want them. These will only be used for hot material. It's already a good tough steel. Hardening and tempering may not completely be required, but we'll see what we think when we get to that point. I think in our next video, we're going to get to work on the project that this was meant to work on, which are some miner's candlesticks. And if you're not familiar with what a miner's candlestick is, you're just going to have to tune in to next week's video, and we'll see how I'm going to make one of those. Now, before we go, some of you might have noticed that I have a little button on my apron. And these buttons were sent to me by Jennifer and Matthew, who say they're not actually blacksmiths, but enjoy watching the content here on the YouTube channel. So Jennifer and Matthew, thanks for the buttons. I'm really glad you enjoy watching the videos. We're going to be doing this for a long time, so stick around and watch some more. Now, if Jennifer and Matthew are actually hoping to sell some of these buttons, you're welcome to put a link down in the comment section. I'll pin that to the top of the comment section where people can find them. But otherwise, as far as I know, these aren't for sale. It's just something they did for the fun of it. As always, I hope you have time in your day to get out to your shop, make something, but stay safe, wear your safety glasses. We'll see you for the next one.